When I first started taking photography really seriously and getting into filmmaking, I was really focused on like a certain group of lenses. And I think more than anything else, I really thought the most important thing that I could get was like a really good zoom lens. So the first like real Sony lens I bought was the 70-300. But very quickly I realized the limitation of not being able to shoot shorter than 70 millimeters. And so I stepped down to the 24-105, which is a very versatile lens that I also really enjoyed. And it wasn't until much later that I got a lens that I actually have found to be so much more useful than either of those. And that's the lens we're gonna talk about today. This, right here, the Zeiss 16-35. I'm talking about this particular lens because this is the one I bought. I got a screaming deal on this thing, I think. And you can still find this lens used on Amazon for $530, which is insane because they retail new for like $1,000. And the only reason I bought this lens was when I bought my first underwater housing, I knew I needed something that was like a wide zoom that I could shoot underwater with. And it has ended up being my go-to lens for so many things. Anything landscape, this is what comes with me. When I'm shooting out of my kayak, like sitting in my kayak, just having the ability to shoot really wide if somebody comes in really close to me, and then close it back into 35 if I want to get like a little more depth of field, really has just proven to be this killer thing. And I've found that the more that I use it, the more I want to use it for more shoots, right? The more I'm stepping away from my 24-105 and really using this. And instead of trying to shoot, you know, somebody from across a lake or across a pool or far away, I would rather just zoom this into 35 and get closer to them and get that same shot. That's all to say, I'm a big fan of this lens. If I haven't made that obvious already, I'm gonna do a little pros and cons list explaining why a 16-35 and a little bit more particularly talking about the Zeiss 16-35 is a great move if you are in that adventure sport filmmaking world. There's one thing I'm gonna mention. You see where it says OSS? That's right. This is a stabilized lens. Having that OSS is great. You know, you're shooting a lot, your adrenaline's pumping. Like if you're shooting mountain biking, you're probably riding a mountain bike too. So you're kind of like, or if you're kayaking, same deal. You're like, okay. I find myself doing that all the time. I'm like, okay, we're going to this spot to get a shot. And then we get to the spot and I'm just like, and I'm like holding the camera just like, nah. So OSS in this particular field is just enormous. Something else that's great about this, there's really two classes of 16-35 lenses. You're gonna have something like this Zeiss, which is an f4, and you're gonna have the f2.8s, which are gonna be like way more expensive. Totally sweet, I would love to buy one of those, but I just can't justify it because I haven't felt unhappy with the speed of this lens. I feel like when I'm at 16, I don't really feel like I need to have a super blurred background. Like if I'm shooting at 16, I'm probably trying to get the background in the shot. So at that point, a faster aperture doesn't make a ton of sense to me because I want to be able to see things. If I had an f2.8, I'd probably just be stopping it down. And at 35, I mean, if you're shooting pretty close to your subject, you just get a nice blurred background. Anyway, the lens I'm shooting on right now is a Rokinon 35mm T1.9. It's one of those Cine AF lenses. And, you know, I'm shooting it at f2.8 right now. And background, nice blurred. Obviously 2.8, it's kind of the ideal aperture. I think that's like a pretty agreed upon thing for shooting videos these days, but f4 is a very close second. And f4, 16-35 is a great compromise between getting those f2.8s that are ridiculously fast, getting a prime, you know, 14mm 1.8 or whatever it is, or just spend $500 and get one of these. This particular lens, and another thing that's great about f4, very sharp, you know, Zeiss, Sony stuff, very well known for how sharp these lenses are, and that holds true with this particular one. I think most f4 16-35 lenses you're going to find these days are going to be really sharp lenses. So, you know, you're not going to have as hard of a time focusing, nailing focus like you would on a faster aperture. And when you get things in focus, they're going to look pristine. As I kind of already mentioned, this was initially just bought to be my underwater shooting lens in my housing. And that's because, once again, this is a great range for that. Shooting wide underwater is awesome. There's a lot of stuff going on. It can be really hard to nail a subject, right? If you're following a fish underwater, they're fast and you're kind of like chasing them around, right? So shooting really wide so that you can kind of keep them actually in the frame can be difficult. I have felt a few times like a little wider underwater would be nice. Like, you know, there's that Sony G Master 12 to 24 now, and I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. But that lens is like $3,000 or something insane, 2,500 bucks. Just not realistic for most people. So once again, this, in my opinion, wins the competition and the thing that makes most sense for shooting underwater. Also, this is going to be about the Zeiss in particular. It is mind-blowing to me, the build quality of this thing. I mean, if you've used a Zeiss Sony lens, you know, the kind of early pre-G Master stuff, you know, they're all metal, very heavy duty. This thing is very stout, and if you've followed my channel and listened to me talk about lenses before, you know I kind of like a heavy, you know, stout metal lens. So I use a lot of vintage lenses. I just kind of prefer that build to the newer plastic stuff. So big fan of that. And then probably, you know, the final thing I want to tout is that, in my opinion, this is just a beautiful lens. It's just something about it, you know? It just looks nice. I like looking at it. It makes me happy when I look at it. And that's a thing, right? Like, it just looks good. It just looks good on a camera. And I like using a lens that looks good on a camera because then I don't know, I feel good about it. Now that I'm done singing all of its praises, I am going to talk about the few downsides of this particular lens, and also kind of generally, once again, 16 to 35 lenses. Since the last thing I talked about was how pretty it was, we're gonna take a slow, closer look at it now, and also talk about how torn up this one is. Now, mind you, I bought this one used on Amazon, so it kind of started out a little rough, but it has definitely gotten more beat up since I got it, and that is probably aesthetically the biggest downside of these metal Zeiss lenses is they tend to get torn up really easy. You know, I don't know what it is about the paint on these things or how they're coating them, but it just seems like if you scratch it with anything, it wants to come right off. If you're a person who's really picky about the way the body of your lens looks, you're probably going to be kicking yourself a lot about these. I bought this one knowing that it was already a little torn up, so it doesn't really hurt my feelings when I get another scratch on it. I'm just like, whatever. This lens was around 500 bucks, and it will continue to be worth around 500 bucks forever because it was torn up when I got it, and it still is now. So definitely, you know, if you're getting it, this particular one, you're probably getting it for the features that you can utilize and not for how it's going to look long term. Sony has, I think it's the newer f4 16 to 35G that they did in that kind of series that they released a year or two ago, that are kind of plastic and lighter weight and all of that stuff. It seems like that is kind of based off this lens with a very different build that's more compact and lighter weight. So if you're looking for something that can maybe take a little more of a beating, that might be a better option. Probably the thing performance-wise that bums me out the most about this lens, which I shouldn't even say the most, I think it's the only thing that really bums me out about this lens, is it does vignette. Once you get it down to 16, it gets some pretty solid vignetting in the corners. If you're shooting with an ND filter, I've had some serious struggles with finding a VND that doesn't vignette once you get it zoomed all the way out. I'm using the Peter McKinnon VND these days, and it's great on like everything except this lens. When I get it down to 16, it just, you know, seems to struggle, and I think that's just the nature of shooting on a wide zoom with a neutral density filter. Is the wider you shoot, the harder it is to eliminate those weird vignetting. And it's not just the corners, it's like sometimes it comes around like at the top and the middle and all these strange places, which leads to more work in post. Not my favorite thing, but I've used other wide lenses and it still does the same thing. So I think it's just part of the game. If anybody's got any recommendations on VNDs or lens VND combos they've used that are, you know, 16 millimeters or wider that have worked really well, I would actually love to hear that. So please let me know, because I'm thinking about going down to maybe like a 14 mil and trying to add that kind of thought into my decision. So that would be super helpful. And finally, the thing's heavy. For, you know, I mean, it's not terribly heavy. It's not like a 200 to 600 lens heavy, but for being a 16 to 35, I feel like it's pretty heavy in the modern era. Once again, I like that. I like a heavy lens. I feel like it helps me stabilize my shot. You know, the kit lens that came with this A7C is like that 28 to 60 that's like this big and weighs nothing. And I feel like when I use that thing, my shots were just insane because the camera and the lens paired were so light, it was just like impossible to steady it. And this lens is heavy enough that I feel like I can just kind of let it rest in my hands and, you know, shoot pretty smoothly, right? I don't look like I'm shaking a ton right now. I'm a pretty shockingly not steady-handed person. So pro or con, depending on who you are. And that's it for my pros and cons. You know, if there's one thing you should try in the modern era of photography and filmmaking, I think a wide zoom is the move. I cannot overstate how much it helped me change my style of shooting from being realistically, I mean, when I look at old videos now, like I was always way too tight in on everything that I was shooting, and switching to a wide zoom kind of helped me understand how to shoot that like very immersive, like get the whole shot, right? Instead of just getting the subject, show what's happening around them. I encourage anybody to give some really wide shots a try. If you can't go with this Zeiss lens or something more expensive, Rokinon has like some 14mm manual lenses. I think I bought one years back for like 150 bucks used. If you tinker with it a little bit and figure it out, then you can get some really cool shots that'll really help you advance your style and diversify the way that you shoot. That's the whole thing, right? It's the full picture. It's about getting linear shots. It's about getting zoomed in shots. It's about getting wide shots. It's about using all the tools at your disposal to create a very full experience of where you are and where the subject is, and sharing that with your viewers. So if you're shooting a lot of zoom stuff and a lot of, you know, like 50mm area stuff, I really encourage you to try shooting wider, get yourself a cheap wide angle lens, and just go nuts. Even try a fisheye, it's fun. So that's gonna do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna be doing some more gear reviews and camera, you know, equipment reviews that are a little more focused on the like outdoor adventure sport filmmaking side of things. So please hit that subscribe button and join along for the journey. And as always, if you got questions, leave those in the comments and I will get back to you. Thanks again for watching, y'all. I still don't have a good ending for these.